So, otherwise.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Mercy.
Yeah, please go on.
And welcome to those who are joining us remotely. Martin, can you hear me? No. Okay. Over to you. Thank you very
The
much,
finish time is 9 o'clock. Ish.
Yeah.
Okay, in Israel that's long gone. So it's just Rabbi Lister. I have to behave now. I looked around and said, "Oh, if Rabbi Lister isn't here, I can say whatever I like." Now you're there, I have to be very careful. Thank you for the zechus to be able to share some different Torah. I was joking about the football. I had no interest in speaking about the football. I passed around some sheets just to. We're not really gonna. There's so many makoros for this particular thing. If you can just take and pass around this way, that'd be great as well. We're not really going to do too much on source sheets because we've only got like 10-15 minutes. But the impetus for what I want to say today is based on a news article that was 2 weeks ago that maybe some of you read it, and that was I can send you this afterwards if you want the source. The Jewish Chronicle, amongst other media outlets, posted an article about a Lufthansa flight. You might have seen this, right? The Lufthansa flight, where over 100 Orthodox Jews were not allowed. So what was the brief story? The brief story is they were going from New York to Budapest, but to fly to Budapest to go and visit the cave, the grave, the kever of Reb Shaila. So Reb Shaila, a famous Chassid, and he's also known as the rat rabbi. You know this? If you have a picture of Shaila up in your home, it says it's a segula to not have any mice or rats in your house. There you go. Try this. You heard it here. Maybe not first, but so that's Reb Shaila. We're going to Reb Shaila on his yacht site, and it turns out that there were a small number, as is reported. I can only tell you what was reported. I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. But it was a small number of, they weren't complying to COVID regulations and et cetera, et cetera. So the part of the story that was like shocking is anyone that looked Jewish, they did not let on the connecting flight, which is absolutely anti-Semitic. And I think they posted an apology after that. But over 100 people were not allowed on the next flight because they deemed them as, they brand them all together. So I'm not giving a, well, I don't buy that. I think it's you look Jewish, you can't come on. That's just blatant anti-Semitism. But we haven't got time to go through the whole thing. I was thinking about it though. We often are on a plane, usually to Israel, because that's where we meet other Jewish people usually. And there are certain circumstances, situations that can be problematic in terms of issues that are come up. That I thought of two, and I thought what we'll do is we can just talk about them briefly, just to even start scratching the surface, because these are things that come up. The two I thought about were minyan, davening on a plane. Okay, this happens many times, and also moving seats because you might not want to sit next to someone of the opposite sex, and that's very interesting as well because I don't mind being moved if they want to upgrade me to first class, but other than that, I've got the seat that I booked and paid for. So we talk about these things. I don't think of anything else. So for the next year, we could talk about. But they're the two main things I thought about. So I thought we could spend like 5-10 minutes just looking through. Actually, are there real genuine issues here? And if nothing else, to give you a couple of just the sources as to where we learn what one and can't do. So this is just the plan for the next few minutes. Is that okay? If it's not, I can leave now. But you can enjoy your croissants. But that's the idea. So really, the main sort we'll deal with sitting next to someone of the opposite sex on a plane. So everyone here, I think, is a man. So we'll just keep it simple. A man sitting on a plane, can he sit next to a woman? Or can a woman sit next to a man? Different from a wedding, right? Where you're not actually you're not necessarily touching each other. But on a plane, it's sitting there, it's cramped, eating, leaning over each other. Is it mutar? Is it permissible? And the obvious answer, by the way, is yes. I'm not paskening today. You can ask your local Orthodox Rabbi Lister, that's you. You can ask him for a specific side. But I'll give you the general views of what our place can say. So what are the issues? The issue is, and I brought it in source number 1, it's actually a pasuk from Parshas Achreimos, which was a couple of weeks ago. Simple pasuk. This is what the Rambam really brings, and this is what everyone brings. Ish kol she'er b'sarai lo sikruvu legalois erva ani Hashem. So this pasuk is specifically referring to, even though we learn from it, the forbidden relationships, i.e. someone within your family, essentially, that you can't have relations with. But any single person, any single man shall not come anywhere near. This is not even the act of intimacy. This is any act of intimacy. So anyone should not, it's, the language is like sikravu. Don't come close. And that's not Shakespeare for, that is, don't come close. Don't have anything to do of any intimate level with someone that you are not allowed to be with. That's the general rule of the pasuk. The Rambam brings in a couple of places the issur of any affectionate touching or not even touching. Any affection shown towards the opposite sex of someone that you are asur to, not permitted to be with or close to, you cannot. We're not going to go through all the sources, we haven't got time. But the two sources I brought, just to, for completion, first is in his mitzvahs leisasa, in his negative commandments, he brings this specifically, and the language he uses, it's not even, it's chibuk nishuk, right, hugging and kissing, but he extends that also like to winking and to looking knowingly in an affectionate way to someone that is asur to you, is problematic according to Rambam, Maimonides, and he brings in his Hilchos Isserei Bia specifically, and this is I think quite fundamental if we look in this topic. He says, this is an Issur D'Oraisa. This is a Torah prohibition of affectionate interactions with the opposite sex. We're not talking about handshaking now. I'll leave that for another time. That's a whole different inyan. But the Rambam is very clear in his and how he qualifies the halacha. It's an Issur D'Oraisa. It's a Torah prohibition to be affectionate, and that's how we're going to understand the Rambam. That's very, very important. It's an affectionate interaction. It's chiba. It's a way which can cause an intimate connection, even if it's only for a moment in that situation. And that's how people understand and qualify the Rambam, because it's important. If it's not chiba, if it's not affectionate, then it's not only not d'oraisa, it's potentially not asur. And that's where handshakes kind of draw. Is a handshake an affectionate thing? You could say yes, you could say no. Again, we're not getting into handshakes today because on a plane, we're not really dealing with handshakes. There are those that disagree with Rambam, of course. Ramban, Nachmanides, he says it's not a d'oraisa, it's only d'orabanan. Rav Moshe, in his Even Ha'ezer Chelik, better think it is, he is asked the question, is it permissible to go on the subway, the underground, the tube, in rush hour, where you're packed in like sardines, right? We've all been there. You've seen those videos out of Japan where they're like shoving them in, like pushing them. We've all been there on the underground where everyone's standing on top of each other. Is that permissible? It's actually a good question, because we say, well, what's the problem? But so he's asked it. So he gives various different explanations. If we're just going straight from the Rambam, by the way, what would we say? There's no chiba, right? There's no intimacy. Aval. The question's a good question. And Moshe goes through this, and he comes out and he concludes, and we're going like a million miles an hour now, so we haven't got time to go through it line by line, but just to give you a broad idea of the topic. He says it's not chiba, it's not affectionate, and he brings actually a raya, an example of a doctor. Is a doctor allowed to perform a routine examination on the opposite sex? We're not talking about pikuach nefesh, we're not talking about an emergency. Some physiotherapy, or I don't know, just a check, just a stum check. There's no pikuach nefesh, there's no sakana, there's no danger. Can the doctor of the opposite sex do that? And he says, why? Yes, it's not chiba. This is a procedure. And he goes through this idea. So he said a rush hour, but he says something very interesting. He said, there are those that are going to tell you, but if I'm standing squashed up against a woman, I'm going to have all these thoughts. And how does he say? I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but just also giving an explanation. What does he say? Work on yourself so that doesn't happen, which is a good point, right? Because we can say, no, there's not, but really, why should, or don't go on the tube, so walk or get a bus or change jobs. Right? If you really think that you're going to put yourself into a situation of that kind of almost sakana, right? Danger for yourself, but work on yourself. Like, don't just say, I can't do it, I can't do it. Again, we're really going back to the plane issue now. So on the plane, again, I'm on the plane, sitting there, there's no chiba, right? So it really comes down to, and there are those that machmeh, even though many of the poskim will tell you today, or not today, many of the poskim today will say it's mutar. It is mutar. It is permissible to sit next to someone of the opposite sex, even if it's like on a rush hour or something, as long as there's no chippah, and you have to work on yourself, that you don't have these thoughts, and it's important to understand who you are, and that you are not your own sanctification of Hashem, trying to be a religious person here, trying to be an honest and sincere person, that doesn't affect the other people. You have to be a Kodesh Hashem. I'll come back to that in a minute, because there's a beautiful Ramchal we should read. So that's a broad. There are those, and it's very important to not make a judgment call on someone else's Yiddishkeit. I can only worry about my kesher with Hashem. There are those that live in a society that they have no interaction with the opposite sex. Bichlal, Shabbos meals, separate tables, and that's their practice of Judaism. It could be that person. It could be different. Again, each to their own situations. I'm not paskening. I'm just giving you like Rav Moshe, who we can rely on Rav Moshe. I'm pretty happy to rely on Rav Moshe. You can rely on Rabbi Lister, where he says, but Rav Moshe is very, very Rav Moshe Feinstein. Sorry, I should. There's lots of many Moshes, but Rav Moshe Feinstein in his Shalos Shuvas. The other issue is minyan, right? Can you join a minyan on a plane? Let's go back before that minyan. So there's a couple of sources. There's a couple of mishnayos here in brachos, very, very famous. Just read it very quickly. You're riding on a donkey, and you got a daven. Time for Kriyas Shema. What should you do? Says the Mishnah. Yered. You should get down. You should get off the donkey. But if you can't, what if you can't? You can't get off a plane. Well, you can, but that's a different issue, right? So if you can't, you have to adjust your body, literally adjust your body to face the Kodesh HaKodeshim, to face wherever wherever. We're gonna get if you can't turn your face, you can't so if you can't turn your body to face that way, so if you can't get down, at least face that way. If you can't face that way, have your beautiful, right? Have your heart, have your mind focused on that place on the Kodesh HaKodeshim. But this is the next Mishnah. You're on a boat. This is now more our case, right? Or a raft or a wagon, whatever it might be. You're on a moving object, right? Not necessarily a chamor. Your covenant is still connected to HaKodeshim. You have to, like not being able to get down off a donkey. This is more like you don't know which way you are. You're in the middle of the ocean. Hopefully someone knows where you are, but you don't know where you are or the direction you're facing in. You don't know, and it happens, right? We're out and about. Your compass on your phone doesn't work. You've got to daven mincha, whatever it might be. You're in a shiver, and no one's got a compass on their phone. So you daven which way you feel is the most appropriate way to daven, and you have your heart facing in the right direction. That's how we paskin. That's a very, very important thing. Notice in that second Mishnah, even though it's not clear which one's which, that he's talking about, the Mishnah says one who is sitting. Hayoshev, he's sitting, which means there's no real havamina that he's standing. So lechatchila, it would appear, if we just read this, you sit down to daven in a situation where you can't stand, right? So that's just taking it from the Mishnah. Just taking it from the Mishnah. The Gemara here has a brisa. We've got 2 more minutes. We go to 5 past. The Gemara has a brisa. The brisa says between the Rabbanan and Rabbi. Rabbanan say the case here really is that you are riding on your donkey and you want to come and daven. You get down only if someone's holding on to the donkey. If someone's holding on to the donkey, why does that make a difference? Because you're not worried about the donkey now. You can focus on your tefillah. If there's no one to hold the donkey, you should stay there. You shouldn't get down. You shouldn't get down. Rabbi says, in any situation, whether someone is to hold the donkey, there isn't someone to hold the donkey, you stay sitting on the donkey to daven, because that is the best place to have kavanah, intent. You're not worried about everything else. You just stay. You want to stop the donkey, you stop the donkey, but you don't get off the donkey. And that's how we paskin. There's an interesting here, machlokes between Rashi and Tosfos, and we'll come to an end in a second. Rashi says the reason is sakana, either danger, you're worried someone's going to come and steal your donkey, or you just can't concentrate on the tefillah, whatever it is, but there's a reason. Tosfos says no, it doesn't agree with Rashi. This is a special exemption. When you are traveling, you are exempt from standing for davening purposes. You should sit where you are. Of course, that's not a blanket heter, like you've got a space where you could stand if you're on a boat, right? If you're on a boat today, a cruise ship, please God, one day I'll be blessed to go on a cruise ship. If I'm on a cruise ship and there's a place that one could stand, and so you don't sit on your balcony, with your cigar and your whiskey and I'm davening for it. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about where you can't stand. We're talking about a plane, because a plane is a good example. What's the problem with the plane? There's so many issues we all know. Blocking other people, you're interrupting other people. So Moshe says, he doesn't even have a havamina that you should stand, let alone minyan, right? He doesn't have a havamina you should stand on an airplane. He said, if you can't stand for purpose of a tefillah, try and stand for the bowing brachas of the Shemona Esrei. So, Baruch Atah Hashem, try and stand for that. And even if you can't do it, because that's sometimes awkward as well. And if there's turbulence, you're in the middle of a tefillah and the light goes on, and you're standing there with talis and tefillin, there's no shaykhs, right? So if you can wait, by the way, I don't think there's a real heter to say, I could get there in an hour. It doesn't like a mensch in the terminal or at home. But I'm here now, I want to daven. I don't think that's necessary. If you can't daven later, that's different. So if now's the opportunity to daven, the Mishnah Berurah says as well, sit there, at least if you're davening Shemona Esrei with your feet together. But it's mutter, it's permissible, and one should better than stand and not be concentrating, or definitely not be in the way of someone else. So now you have some of the Makoros, you have the Gemaras, the Mishnah, the Gemaras, you have Moshe to rely on. One final thing, just because, and the Shulchan Aruch, by the way, has an interesting one. The Mishnah doesn't bring the Shulchan Aruch, at least he doesn't pass in this way. The Shulchan Aruch says that if you daven sitting down, really you should go back later and daven again standing. Because but you know, I thought Svadi came. Okay, so the Mishnah. Ma? Speak up because it's not fair on the. What's it? Tashlum, you're talking about. You're talking about. Good question. We've got to finish in 5 minutes ago. So no one's walked out yet. No one's asleep, so it's okay. But no, not the Tashlum. So the Mesilas Yesharim says as follows in his Perek. I think it's Chaf or Chaf Aleph. Perek Chaf, 20th Perek of Mesilas Yesharim. Ramchal. And this beautiful, beautiful work is like required reading for everyone in the world, let alone you're Jewish or not Jewish. Definitely just about to be a mention, a good person. But of course, with everything is the kivun of serving Hashem, serving the Almighty. So when he talks about chasidut, not chasidus, chasidut, how do you define piety? So it's going above and beyond, right? It's taking halacha, taking Jewish law in connection with Hashem, and being that much more involved, being not just machmir, but he understands what does it mean, piety. He said that everything has to be balanced and weighed. You can't just make decisions in and of yourself. In that moment, you have to be measured and balanced in how one makes those decisions. And therefore, he said, if I'm making a decision about something in my own avodas Hashem, in my own connection with God, I have to weigh up that with how, what, why, when, who, all the circumstances. So my kiddush Hashem to daven at the right time, the right way, shouldn't affect someone else. That's not chasidut. That's what he said. And that's just a nice way, I thought, to conclude, because, you know, when you're davening on a plane, if I create a chil Hashem, I don't mean a chil Hashem, we throw that word around a lot. Someone was cut me up, it's a chil Hashem. Maybe, I don't think every act where some Jew does something that's not, you know, always the best. I don't think it's always so poshut to be a chil Hashem. But we have also seen cases where Jews create a severe chil Hashem, but not to take the global understanding. What's a chil Hashem just for me, Marc Levene, as a person? If I don't act in a way in which I doesn't give nachas to Hashem, if I don't act in a way in which is the derech yasher, it's the right way to act for myself, I'm creating a chil Hashem. My kids, my family, the people around me, in the broad definition of it. So I'm trying to understand this Ramchal just to say, if my kiddush Hashem causes a chil Hashem, then that's not chasidut, and that's not the way you should act. Again, I'm not paskening for you today. You ask your rabbis, and I'm probably saying stuff you already know, but I thought we'd give it some meat and to go through some of the makorot to understand it. I hope, Stephen, I hope you could hear me. You got every other word.
We needed more time. It's scratching the surface. A very lovely subject.
We didn't even scratch the surface of it. But anyone? Right, but what's your question? You're saying the Shulchan. Just to check, the Shulchan Aruch said that if you I have to go back and look what he means, but it's you're making up. It's tashlumim. It's as if you didn't daven. He said it's not good enough. The tefillah. We're talking about Shemona Esrei, by the way. We're talking tefillah. Tefillah is stand. So I didn't bring that Shulchan. I mean, I could literally bought 30, 40 sources. And I was worried that I'd start reading them and we'd really be here till tomorrow, right? Next week, part 7, right? But the Shulchan Aruch says, I have to go back and check his exact language. He says that if you daven sitting down, then you should go back and daven out tashum minutes. You're making it up because, you know, B'di Eved, it wasn't even B'di Eved. Or maybe it was B'di Eved. I don't know. I have to look at it. But, you mean don't daven? Zman. Yeah, it's something, right? You're there now. You daven. Maybe, but you can think of several examples. Maybe the Shulchan Aruch, I don't think was thinking about an airplane, right? So he was probably thinking about a situation where you had to daven sitting, and now you find yourself an opportunity.
No, I did.
In London.
I went to my house and I did daven, and we were allowed to do it.
We just said you again. You have to understand the situation, right? So if you're in a situation where, again, I'm not paskening. I'm giving because I think we have to each situation has to be delicately discussed with a rabbinic authority. But if you're in a situation where You cannot daven b'kavana. It could be that every bracha is levatala. It could be, and therefore it's a serious. If you can daven in a situation that's mutar, even if it's not lechatchila, right? If it's not ideal, but it's mutar, even though it looks wrong. It's like when you go to a pre-Pesach cleaning shit, right? Yeah, I always tell my wife, why are you doing that? You don't have to. The kids, as much as they might eat all over the house, they don't have a pizza party behind the fridge, right? So she looks at me like I'm not Jewish, like like there's things, we have to be balanced, right, with all these things. However, it doesn't feel right. How can I daven Shemona Esrei sitting down on an airplane with talis and tefillin? How? That because that was God wants me right there and right then, rather than standing up. And I've stood up in a plane to daven Amida, right? One of the worst davenings I've ever had. I'm so proud of myself. I'm not joining the minyan. I'm going to daven the talis and tefillin. This is years ago. It was awful because talis there, and then the waiters, the steward come past, and someone else. Yeah, and then some, and you know what? Even so the guy in the window wants to go to the toilet, so he can't now. Because he doesn't want to interrupt my davening because he's a tzaddik. But now he needs to go to the toilet, so I'm stopping him from going to the bathroom. Or he's got cramp in his leg and he wants to. So again, there's lots of things to think about. But an or lagayim, yeah, not oive lagayim. Like that. Can I use that?
Thank you. There's a folder.
If you don't want to keep these, I'm happy to take them back.
And I'll do
Amen. Thank you for inviting me. We leave in less than 2 weeks now.
Wow.
Thank you. Oh, he's much better than me. He's fantastic. He's awesome. I want to come. He's a huge Liverpool fan. Yeah. Also Liverpool. No, yeah, but you're not. No. They just appointed him this weekend, Sam and Liat Melanchik. They're not currently serving as
5-1 on Zoom.
Thank you, Rabbi Lister.